Hey, it's Josh Zeller, your cultural Catholic, coming at you with a Friday of just horrible domestic news. Um, I'm going to talk about three stories today. They are the head of the Federal Ethics Committee resigning, ICE being told to do what they're doing now, and it's not actually a good idea, and how election experts are not confident in Donald Trump's election commission. But first, the Washington Post on Thursday reported that the director of the Independent Office of Government Ethics, who has been the federal government's most persistent critic of the Trump administration's approach to ethics, announced Thursday that he is resigning nearly 6 months before his term is scheduled to end. So a little bit of backstory on this: the Office of Federal Ethics is a nonpartisan organization that is designed to look at the ethics of whoever is in charge of the federal government and try to get them to do ethical things. For instance, and the term of the head of this ethics office is 5 years. So uh, the current guy who is resigning is Walter M. Schaub Jr. He's been working at this ethics committee for a few years now, and he was appointed as the head in 2013. So his term would have ended next year in January. Um, and the idea of this 5-year term is to create some sort of independence between the person who is appointed and the appointer. So Schaub obviously was appointed by Obama, but he would have served into the first year of Trump's presidency. Um, and actually, he's been very active during Trump's presidency and actually up into during the election as well. The Washington Post explains that on the election day, on the morning of November 30th, the official OGE, Office of Government Ethics, Twitter account erupted in a storm of 9 tweets over 3 minutes that appeared to mimic Trump's bombastic tweeting style, urging the president-elect to separate himself from his business. One of these tweets is, "At real Donald Trump, OGE is delighted that you've decided to divest your businesses. Right decision." And another one read, "At real Donald Trump, OGE applauds the total divestiture decision. Bravo." So that sounded a lot like how Donald Trump does his tweets, um, only much more positive. However, as we all know, that did not happen. Instead, he retained control of his businesses and just handed day-to-day operations over to his sons. Um, However, by keeping the OGE is concerned about this because he's keeping control of his businesses, and a lot of his businesses are hotels, one of them being in DC, and that could create a conflict of interest for how he makes decisions, and that is something that the OGE is very concerned about, obviously. They clash. Schaub and the OGE clashed consistently with President Trump, and actually Salon yesterday argued that although Schaub did not specifically mention the Trump White House in his resignation letter, his reference to the importance of believing that public service is a public trust should be perceived as a swipe at the president. Schaub has clashed with the Trump White House on a number of ethics issues over the past 6 months, even remarking in May that their uncooperativeness over publicly disclosing ethics waivers granted to former lobbyists was an extraordinary thing. I have never seen anything like it. A little background on that: when Trump administration first came into power, they were getting all these ethics waivers sent out, and it was predominantly to lobbyists, and there was some ethical concerns there because they could still be working for the lobbying firms that they were employed by unofficially, and that would create a conflict of interest and an ethical issue. There was also reports of an undated waiver, and this was for Steve Bannon, and this could be used for him to funnel stories back to Breitbart, which he used to run, and Breitbart is a far right-wing, anti-Semitic, white supremacy news outlet. And there is maybe not credible evidence, but some evidence that this may be happening, that he's funneling stories to Breitbart to kind of stoke up Donald Trump's base, which Donald Trump's base seems to be very connected to the audience of Breitbart. And so, with the step down of Schaub, there is now a need for a new appointment. Of course, the acting director of the OGE will be. Where is it? Shelley K. Finlayson, who's the Ethic Office's chief of staff. There was a lot of praise of her by Schaub, and um, whoever the replacement is, there's going to be a lot of concern uh, brought up by the Democrats, as Chuck Schumer stated. And while he may be leaving the Office of Government Ethics, he is planning on joining. He is going to be working at the Campaign Legal Center. The Campaign Legal Center is a nonpartisan organization that supports strong enforcement of U.S. campaign finance law, such as it is. And it's actually done a lot of great work. It's targeted both sides of the aisle. It's gone against John Edwards when he used his charity organizations. It also targeted the Swift voters and America Coming Together for their work in the 2004 election, and they also filed several amicus briefs against the Citizens United case. So hopefully he's still able to take action as part of the campaign legal center. But it's something that we should all really be concerned about. Now, on to ICE, or the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ProPublica reports that the head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement Unit in charge of deportations has directed his officers to take action against all undocumented immigrants they may cross paths with, regardless of criminal histories. And the guidance appears to go beyond Trump's administration's publicly stated aims, and some advocates say may explain a marked increase in immigration arrests. So a little context to this: in recent months, since Donald Trump became the president of the United States, there has been a marked increase in arrests of undocumented immigrants. And as this ProPublica article published today on July 7th, being an undocumented immigrant technically isn't a criminal offense. It is a civil matter. Um, it has there's been a marked increase in the number of arrests of undocumented immigrants, predominantly those who have beyond crossing the border without papers, which again is a civil matter, have no criminal history at all. This includes arresting upstanding citizens just doing their job, citizens in air quotes, of course, those who are entrepreneurs or business owners, and those who are just taking their kids to school or trying to get legal protections against significant others who are in the country. Um, and this has caused a lot of issues overall. For instance, there have been reports that LA has had a marked drop in reports of crimes among the Latino community. So that means if something happens to a member of the Latino community in LA, they're less likely to report it than they used to, and law enforcement really does need that trust of the community. And it seemed that the the acting head of ICE, because there's no political appointee yet, and the director of ICE's Enforcement and Removal Operations Division are both very much, in favor of Trump's hard stance, and they want to get rid of as many undocumented immigrants as possible, even though the real trouble. The real focus should be on those who actually have criminal records. However much I would disagree with some of the offenses, those who have committed a crime are the ones that should be focused on, not people who are just trying to make better circumstances for their families. This ProPublica article also cites several instances of this happening. Quote, for example, an Ecuadorian high schooler was detained by ICE agents who showed up at his home in upstate New York hours before his senior prom in June. 3 restaurant workers targeted for immigration violations were arrested in May in Michigan after ICE agents ate breakfast where they worked. A Salvadoran man is facing deportation in Houston after voluntarily showing up to an ICE office for a routine check-in. So again, I understand the concern about undocumented immigrants, but most of them aren't real criminals. That's been noted in study after study. You're more likely to be targeted by a criminal native citizen than an undocumented or a documented immigrant. So, and the likelihood of immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, taking our jobs is not true. It's the jobs that native-born citizens don't want to do, and this unnecessary targeting of all undocumented immigrants, those who have a criminal background and those who don't, and those who don't are the ones who seem to be taking the brunt of this, is not a really good way to focus the resources that they have at ICE. So this is not good. And our final story today, also brought to us by ProPublica, is telling us that election experts are seeing flaws in the voter commission that Trump is hoping will be used to smoke out voter fraud. A little context to this. Right after the election, Trump argued that if 3 million illegal votes had not been cast, he would have won not only the Electoral College, but the popular vote. That is an outright lie. The source that he got it from is not credible in any way. And it's not very good. Earlier last week, this election commission, which is run by Mike Pence, the vice president, and Chris Kobach, the secretary of state for Kansas, sent letters out requesting that each state send detailed information on voters, such as social security numbers, military status, and many other things, which some of these things states are not legally required or able to make available, which is a little concerning. And in a statement given to ProPublica by Mark Lauder, the state information will be run through a number of different databases looking for possibilities of areas where voter rolls can be strengthened. However, it was later reported by the Washington Times that the commission may seek to check names against federal government databases for non-citizens, which was used in 2012 by Rick Scott of Florida, and that did not really work well. It's going to be a lot of things that aren't really scientific, aren't really going to catch any actual voter fraud, which isn't really a problem. I heard of a study that in the last few years, out of the billion ballots that have been cast, there have only been 14 documented cases of voter fraud. So that is something to take into consideration when thinking about this. And Chris Kobach actually runs a voter fraud checking system, and that has not really worked out. ProPublica writes that Kobach's interstate voter registration crosscheck program has 200 false positives for every actual double registration, and that is not very good. There's actually the Brennan Center for Justice actually posted an article with lots of research pointing out that it's not really voter fraud really isn't a problem. Actually, a lot of anecdotal evidence from the past election. A lot of the voter fraud was Trump supporters. So, I mean, projection is a thing. This could be the problem that's going on. But I'm just really skeptical of anything that's asking for that much information. And a lot of states are saying that they will not release any of the information that this commission is asking for, which is good because this is an overreach for a problem that isn't really a thing. And I am suspicious of what they actually are intending to do. So, quick recap: the Federal Ethics Commission director's resigning. ICE is overstepping what it needs to do in targeting non-criminal undocumented citizens as well as criminal undocumented citizens, and the election commission that Trump has commissioned is not really going to be effective at all for anything at all. Hopefully, things will be sorted out at some point with these things, but I'm not very confident. This is Joshua, your cultural Catholic, signing off.